Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you I have a review, a mighty game review of Sprocket. Now folks, at the time of this review, the game is early access and it is only a week old. The game is still in development and it's kind of at an alpha stage at best, but I'm still going to give you a review, tell you what I feel about the game, give you some information about the game, and tell you if I think that in its current state, is this game worth it? So let's dive on into it. I'm going to start off with the publisher and the developer is Hamish Dunn. It is only one person. It is no more right now than one person doing this whole game. It is made with the Unity engine and it was released August 26th of 2021 for Windows PC. Only Windows PC. And at the time of this recording, I have 87.5 hours. Now let's talk a bit about the game. Right now, currently, there is a couple missions in the game, and the idea of the game is to design tanks to get through those missions and have fun while doing it. Because honestly, designing the tanks is actually mostly part of the fun process in itself. It's actually more fun than running the missions, although running the missions is quite fun as well, but running the missions or designing the tanks I feel is actually more fun than anything else, even though sometimes it can be absolutely frustrating as all hell, but we won't go there. Now when it comes to the design process, you're really got the freedom to make your tanks as big or as small as you want. That being said, I've seen people literally make tanks that are pretty much nothing more than a single road wheel, a drive axle, a drive sprocket, idle wheel, and maybe a cannon, and more or less those people are just going for speed runs, while I've seen people make giant monstrosities such as the Mouse, the Type 5 Heavy, the E100, and even the OI. I myself have done Jagdtigers. That's probably the biggest I've gone is a Jagdtiger, mostly because I'm not interested in really getting anything bigger, although my T28 heavy tank is pretty big as well. So you do have some room to play with. And that being said, you could sit there and create absolute works of art with what we currently have in the game, or you can make some kind of cursed design that kind of makes you just want to scream and run away. And trust me, I've seen plenty of designs that make me want to do what Jim Carrey was just doing. Now, let's talk about the game itself. I feel the sounds are okay. There does need to be some more sounds in my opinion. There needs to be some different cannon sounds, some more sound variation in the engines. But the engines do sound like engines, the cannons sound like cannons, etc. And when stuff blows up, it sounds like stuff blowing up. I just feel there needs to be a little bit more variation. You do have a graphics are okay as well. They're nothing I would write home to mom about, but they're not bad, especially for one guy working on the game. You really actually have a freedom to design. You know, you can do angled armor and you can do huge cannons and giant fuel tanks and have big ass ammo stowages, but what it really comes down to is it comes down to multiple factors. Some missions only let you have such like a maximum weight to your vehicle. Your era actually becomes a variation as well, which I'll dive into here in a bit. He's really thought about everything. The thickness of your armor can actually hurt your tank, can cramp your tank design. The amount of crew you need to actually efficiently serve the tank can become a factor. There's a lot of different things that he's actually taken time and made factors that does kind of hamper your freedom of design. Now that being said, that's kind of like your typical tank things. You're trying to find the holy trinity of tanks the best you can, which the holy trinity of tanks is mobility, firepower, and protection or armor. And that being said, that's what you're trying to reach for. You're trying to reach for the best balance of those three that you can get within your design. So essentially, a part of it, you almost need an engineering degree, especially when it comes to messing with the engines and the transmissions themselves. But you know, basically it's gotten to the point now where people are starting to get a good grasp of how things work in the game. There's some really good tutorials out there on how to do this type of stuff, and there's also a lot of people who are willing to answer questions, including myself. Now, there's a part of that as well is also the balance and design. The variations and eras, that's actually one thing I want to dive into, because you actually have multiple eras in the game. It starts off with World War One. As you can see here, this is some World War One footage. This is my M1917. This is an early variant of my M1917. Going through trying to cross the trenches during the World War One mission. And essentially the World War One mission, the tech level is actually really bad. Kind of like when actually the British Mark One was around. The tanks were not very good. But then it spans across into late war, World War II, and that's where you start building stuff like Cane Tigers and things like that. There's actually some people who've even tried to build more modernized tanks. I myself, from one of the members of the Discord, got a Chieftain, which is actually not a bad tank as long as I don't expose the hull, although the engine does suck. But yeah, it's a Chieftain Mark II. That's kind of comes with the territory of a Chieftain Mark II. And that's another thing I want to talk about too, is there's actually locations to run. I do like the fact that there's different locations to build in. You can run your missions in. There is various different types of missions, although there does need to be more missions, but I'll dive into that more here in a bit. But it's all fun. You can actually try your tanks out, see how good your designs are, see where your weaknesses are, maybe try and figure out ways to improve your design, things of that nature. So it kind of becomes a lot of trial and error at the end of the day. I mean, essentially, that's what it really was for real tank design. There was tank designs that in the early years that were absolutely horrible because people didn't really have a good idea of what made a tank, what would be or is a good tank. And then towards your late World War II, you start seeing stuff that starts marking good tank designs for its time period, and that's kind of what you have here as well. Now, one thing I also do like is you can actually share your designs with friends. There's a Blueprints channel in my Discord, and there's also a Blueprints channel in the Sprocket Discord. I will put a link for both down below, one for my Discord as well as one for the official Sprocket Discord, where you can actually upload your blueprints and you can actually share your blueprints. There's also another website called sprocketbuilds.com, I believe, that also you can post your blueprints on and share your blueprint designs as well. So people can go and actually download these different designs that people are creating and use them for themselves and even modify them. There's some of the designs I actually play with on a regular basis. Some of the designs I do nothing more than use for enemy tanks. Now, that being said, you can also use your designs for enemy tanks. And there's a way to do that. There is tutorial videos on my YouTube channel on how to do such things for those that are interested. And it does make the game a much more interesting experience, and kind of what makes it tougher too. Some of the tank designs that are actually in the core files of the game really aren't all that amazing. They're not bad, but they're not amazing. However, when I start seeing my own tanks, I start to kind of sweat bullets because I know how good my tanks are versus some of the other tanks that are out there. And that's the interesting thing. You could say there's different skill levels and comfort zones and etc. in the various tanks out there. Now, to talk about some of the negatives, now understand this game is in really early development. So more than likely, these negatives are going to go away. Now, the positives I just said that I feel are positive with the game, they're not going to go anywhere anytime soon. They're pretty much the core features of the game. Now, the stuff that I feel is negative is the music is nothing more than background noise. There is music, but it's really nothing fancy. It works. It's there. But you could just as easily shut the music off and listen to YouTube or something. Spotify, whatever. Whatever these kids do nowadays. I mean, I'm the generation of MTV, so what do I know? You are limited to the design because of the limited amount of parts, shapes that you can do. We can't do rounded shapes currently. There's limit to the decals. There's a limit to the shaping. There's limit to the paint. That being said, it's also, once again, an early access title that's more or less an alpha. I mean, it's really a glorified tech demo, if you will. That being said, though, that's just kind of a negative that I'm pretty sure is just going to kind of fade away over time, which I'll get into a bit. The AI does need some work, and it does need some balancing. I mean, I don't know why. It seems like sometimes the enemy AI are absolute sharpshooters, while my AI is absolute crap. As well as there's a mission that it's called Silent Borders. And essentially the idea is you have to drive from one side of the map to the other side of the map in the darkness and not get hit by AT guns. The problem is it's so goddamn dark you can't see a thing, but the AT guns are going to spot you and kill you. So, well, it's not so bad if you build a really heavy tank that bounces shots. And I have to say the traction's a bit off. It would be nice to see the traction system be a little bit better. Now, that being said, Hamish has actually made improvements to the traction system, but I feel it's still not quite there yet. I got my opinions on why I think that's the case. I'm not really going to state those here, but I am going to say it's one of those things that Hamish is working on, and he's been very transparent. Capitalize very, if you will, on the different things that he's doing to improve the game. The information that he's given out, as well as besides of information that he's given out, he's actually put out a roadmap of different things that he's going to do. Now, this reverts back to the limited design feature, and please take a moment to pause this, look it over, while I just sit here and ramble about the roadmap stuff. You know, the limiting designs, I think, are going to fade away as Hamish introduces new parts, as he introduces things such as rounded turrets, being able to do multiple turrets, things of that nature. So at the end of the day, one of my gripes currently about the game is just going to go away over time because of things such as the game is currently still in development and is going to evolve over time, and new stuff is going to be worked in. All that being said, folks, do I think the game is currently worth it in its state for the 20 spot that it is on Steam? Well, you know what? Hell yeah, I do, and so does Chuck Norris. So go out and buy yourself Sprocket. It is actually a really fun game. I've had a lot of fun with designing my own tanks, as well as just looking at other designs that people have made. I've enjoyed actually just hanging out and speaking with the community in the Discord, talking about various things, everything from tank designs to politics to whatever. So there is actually a very good, awesome community for Sprocket as well, which is definitely a bonus in itself for a game that's not really an online game yet, that has a good community. Anyway, folks, that is my review of the early access edition of Sprocket Tank Design. Thank you very much for tuning into my YouTube channel. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and have yourself a wonderful day, and hopefully I'll see you playing Sprocket.